Hello. It is it like 1, 2? It's 2, 2:02. Um, and, yeah, it was raining earlier in the day, and there's a nice break, so I figured, why not do a walk? Sorry, I just ate, so I'm like, there's a little bit of stomach stuff. But anyway, so, oh yeah, I forgot there's gonna be slugs because it rained. So I'll have to pay extra attention to that. But yeah, I talked about yesterday. Today I got the car figured out. I got my the credit card like working so I could get the car. I actually have the credit card. I picked my flight for, I'm going to be leaving on Monday, the 28th, to, what's it called? To Italy, to Rome specifically. So that's kind of the plan there. And I'll get to Italy at like, I think it was like 10, or it's like 8 or 10 in the morning, which means I'm gonna have to see if I can just sleep on a plane. I don't know, so we'll see. But I think that's gonna be tough for me. But honestly, I'm not gonna push specific ideas. I haven't tried it, so I don't know. Maybe I will be really good at falling asleep on a plane. So I don't know what will happen there. Also, the fact that this is the first time I had to pick one of the larger planes. It was it had 3 rows of seats instead of the 2 rows that I'm normally accustomed to. So this plane is rather big, which I guess it makes sense. If you're going longer distances, being a bigger plane, I think that makes sense. So yeah. I also got the place I'm going to be staying at over that weekend, which is a couple days. So, because I plan on, not spending too much time in Virginia. Not that Virginia is not a nice place, but I don't know. I feel like I'm going there, doing the thing, and then I'm leaving. But yeah, so I think that's the plan. So I have to blow my nose. It's come so early today. Okay. Settling myself. Also, when I was editing videos the day before yesterday, I saw the POV you guys have of whenever I put the camera between my legs. to like blow my nose. And I'm like, damn, that's not a great POV. So I do sorry, I apologize about, like, it's either that or just, like, I don't know where else I would put the camera. But seems to work the best, so, you know. Anyway, so what do I want to talk about today? Well, I actually have something kind of important. I don't really know where this is going to go. So, you know, forewarning. And to be fair, this is a side thing before I get started. I honestly never really know where I'm going to go when I'm talking, because I don't, like, I think of the basic topic or the basic concept or idea, where I'm like, oh yeah, I want to talk about that. And then that's it. Like, I don't, yeah, I think about things, but especially with videos, I try really hard to think while I'm talking. So it's like I'm talking and I'm like allowing myself to kind of do the stream of consciousness as opposed to, you know, planning ahead what I want to say. And that tends to work out really well for me. So that's what I do. But yeah. So, you know, for this, it's like I have a basic idea. But I'm always interested to see where things go. So, okay. Man, there are a lot of slugs. They be slugging it up. Okay, so it must be a plane. So I guess to start out, there's a fundamental question that I think is really important to ask. And it's, how do you know what you know? Like, how do you know something to be true? And this is like, Tom, what the fuck are you talking about? But how do you know that something is a truth? Where do you cross this threshold to where you've decided this thing is a part of reality? And at first you may be like, why would I even ask that? But if you don't ask this question, you kind of have no idea what your actual internal basis for what is truth and what is not truth, where it comes from. And you might be like, truth is just truth. And that's it. But that's not really the case. Truth is not just truth. Because something that we think of as true is actually most often not the whole story, or can be just outright false. What do I mean by that? Well, I'll take science as an example. The most rigorously examined things in our life. Science and mathematics are kind of like the cornerstones for the modern era. And as such, we put high importance on science when describing the world around us. And this is fine. God, I have to blow my nose again. It's totally fine to kind of base things on science, because science is a very good metric for certain things. The problem comes in where science doesn't give you the full picture. And for people who are very materialistic and do not believe in spirituality or any other aspect of reality aside from physical existence, this sounds completely blasphemous, and it's almost like science is their religion. Well, if science can't explain it, then it must be bullshit. Or if science hasn't proven it and can't explain it, then, proceed to put some sort of explanation. And unfortunately, over the years, we've kind of lost some aspects of knowledge. Here, let me get across the street and I'll continue. How's it going? Oh, pretty good. It's starting to turn out to be a nice day. But yeah, so what do I mean by we've lost some pieces of knowledge? Well, specifically, when it comes to spirituality in general, this, we can call it whatever we want. It's non-physical existence. There is physical reality, and then there's something else. What you want to call it is no consequence. But there is something else. And we've lost a lot of our wonder and ability to conceptualize things that foundationally 1,000 or 2,000 years ago, or even several hundred years ago, humans have deeply known about. And it's this idea of connecting with nature, being able to kind of feel things, having this extrasensory perception that goes past physical into something else. And I'm being broad and vague on purpose because it doesn't matter what the thing is. It's just, we know that it exists fundamentally. There is something else. And some people use religion or, what have you, to describe this other component that we just know is there. It's a deep knowing And it shows up in a myriad of different ways, such as, but not limited to, you go on a vacation where you're not working and you're outside and the sun hits your face and you feel this peace. And this peace, you think, oh, it's because I'm not working. But if you've ever taken a week off and stayed inside the whole time, you know that's not true. Because being inside so much disconnects us from nature and from this spiritual awareness. But it comes back online the moment you're out in nature. The moment you're, taking a walk, letting the sun hit your face, staring at, the ocean or a river or a waterfall. Things like this, where there's this natural beauty that seeps into you and revitalizes you on a level that just, you can't really explain why it happens. But everyone instinctively knows to go to nature when they're stressed. To, oh my gosh, the world is crazy, I need to touch grass. And the moment they touch grass, it's like they've been cleansed and healed of this malady of the mind. And so this is, I'm circling back now to how do we determine what is true? There's this phenomena that we know of that just is the tip of the iceberg for all sorts of non-physical things. And so I think this is where you really do have to fundamentally question, like, how do you actually know what truth is? How can you recognize it? And how can you, where is your flexibility? Are you super flexible in allowing for new information to change your perspective? It is scary, but also it allows for you to morph and change over time. Or are you someone who fundamentally do you feel a deep rooted, I will not change my opinion, I will not bow to new information, and you dig yourself deep into your beliefs? Because what I've noticed is most people, not all people, but most people tend to have a system that they subconsciously decide what is truth and what is not truth based on their beliefs, not based on what the actual data that they're getting is, whether it be physical data, spiritual data, data from instruments, whatever it is, right? Instead of just examining it and observing with an open mind, oftentimes I see people filter things. I keep this, like, it's the second or third time I got hit by a spider web in my eye. Like, what the heck? Okay, so, but like, if you're not open to basically anything existing, allowing for all the possibilities to exist, even if it's small, and you kind of use your beliefs as the marker instead, inevitably, you will come across an instance where, or several instances, where you get data that doesn't fit with your belief, and so you throw it out. And this is a very subconscious thing. I'm not saying you're actively doing this, but yeah, it's tough because Hi, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Oh, pretty good. Hey, little guy, it's okay. You're okay. You're okay, little guy.
It's nice, but you want to pet pretty good. Come on.
Hi.
Come on.
You're fine.
You're fine, Ruby.
You're fine. Bye. No, you're fine. Don't worry about it. Okay. But anyway, so that puppy is struggling. So excited, so ready to just see everything. But yeah, so so my kind of thing is if you let your beliefs be the arbiter to what is true and what is false, number one, you better have a damn good belief system that encompasses everything. It needs to be really open, because without something incredibly robust and open and having the ability to change over time, you're gonna get stuck at some point where someone's gonna give you data. I say someone, it could be you, it could be the news, it could be nature, you know, whatever. And if you have that filter on with your beliefs, the downside of this, there are upsides, which is why people do it. It makes the world easier to understand. If you simplify things into something that you know, then you don't have to worry about the unknown. You don't have to worry about all this other stuff. So it allows you to be more targeted and focused in your life. So it's like, there's a reason we do this. But because a lot of us do this, and even subconsciously, like, you know, my way of combating this is to just make my belief as open as possible so that my belief can accommodate anything that I interact with. And if I can't, that's when I have to rethink my belief system. You know, if suddenly an alien shows up in front of me and tells me that all of my beliefs are false, and then shows me this whole other existence, like, obviously I'm going to have to rethink everything. But the more open your belief system is, the more room you have for the unbelievable. The things that previously you would just write off. And so I'm bringing this up because it's important to be aware of how your belief systems impact how you view reality. A very simple example. If I believe that a supplement is helpful for me, then even if in the long run it may not actually be helpful, I can kind of get into a scenario where my belief system kind of, it's almost like you get the placebo effect that helps to instill, yeah, you're right. This is good for yourself. Taking that pill every day, it is the way to like heal yourself or get better, or feel whatever it is, right? But may not be true. It's only true because you kind of decided it was true. And if you start having negative side effects from taking this consistently, you might write it off as something else because you've decided that this pill you're taking is the thing that makes you feel better or whatever, right? So, this is why fundamentally I ask, why do you believe that something is true? How do you acknowledge this is truth? And my answer for 90 it's a lot. I'm not going to put a percentage, but like there's a lot of people who use their beliefs as filter 1. Filter 2, who or what is the information? Where is it coming from? And I say that in deliberate order. If someone says something that is very credible, you still will not agree with it if it's against your belief filter. Because your belief filter is kind of the number one filter that you use. So you have your belief filter, then you filter based on credibility of the person, place, or thing that gave you the information. And you'll use yourself as the most credible source. But sometimes you will throw away your own evidence if it conflicts with your beliefs. So this is why we kind of, as we delve deeper, we start to see all of these filters that we use to filter reality. And again, there's a reason the filters are there, but it also means that you lose things when you filter this way. So, and I'll say some people only have 1 or 2 filters. Other people may have 10, 20, 50 filters. Because over time, different people and society and work and blah, 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 whatever, will instill different filters onto you. and try to convince you that these filters are important. This is why you have scenarios where someone is living their whole life in the same town. They pick up their father's job or their mother's job. They live in the same house because it's been passed down for generations. You don't ask questions. You just do the thing that you've been taught to do your whole life. And anything that goes outside of that, you just disregard as some nonsense that people are trying to sell you on. And this filter system is so compact that, you don't even have the chance to start asking questions, because questions are bad. We don't ask questions. And this is how you get kind of indoctrinated into this mass filter that, well, all my neighbors say it, all the people I know say it, I know my dad says it, my mom says it, and so this is like, it's honestly like a cult behavior. But you don't really know that this is not a normal way of existing. And I say normal in quotes, because there really isn't a normal way to exist. There's just more open and less open. So this very closed way of existing. There's nothing inherently wrong with that existence, but it does strip away your ability to make critical thinking decisions. This is why the really intelligent kids have issues with their parents the most. It's because they question why their parents are asking them this or telling them to do this. Hey, don't go outside today. Why? Because I said so. Well, that's not a good answer. But the full reason could be, okay, well, there's reported sightings of a wild animal in the area, and the government has advised in that area to keep your kids inside for the next couple days while they hunt down this wild animal. I mean, you can't really tell the kid that. You can, but the kid won't fully understand and grasp all the reasons why the animal is not something you just go up and pet. Like, well, why? Why can't I just go up to an animal and pet it? It won't hurt me. And that may be true. It could be, again, you're dealing with your parents' filtering. So your parent could be unrealistically trying to do something where it makes sense for them, but their filtering is also narrow. And they're trying to do the best for their kid, but they don't even realize that maybe it's helicopter parenting. So this is why it's so tough to deal with this kind of stuff. Dealing with let me take a break at the crossroads again. This is why the best of intentions can be fucked in some way. This is also why, as you open yourself up more, you start to understand that most people are making decisions that they genuinely think is in the best interest of you and them. A combination. Yeah, some people can be selfish, but where's the selfishness coming from? You dig down and you're like, oh, it's because they didn't have anything as a kid. And so they're like, I got to give myself all the things I didn't have as a kid. And this is how the selfishness grows, so on and so forth, right? Or you could have a scenario where the parents kind of push them into doing the exact opposite. Because they're like, I hate the way my parents did this, so I'm going to be the one that doesn't do that. And then they take it to an extreme. And so this is why often the people who have gone past the idea of filters for reality and have instead just kept themselves open, or, you know, maybe their beliefs do filter things, but at a very minimal level, where it's like, I understand that these filters exist to protect me and my mind. How can I use them to my advantage while also trying to be as open as I can? And then you kind of slowly work on it, right? But it's a process. I'm gonna keep going. So this is kind of where, as you delve deeper into the self-study, you can start to see the filters. And let me ask you, is a filter that your 6-year-old best friend's parents told you, is that actually the best filter for you? Because when you were 6, it might have been very helpful. But when you're 30, 40, 50, probably not. You can probably decide for yourself what is and isn't proper. But most people don't examine their filters, and they just leave them. And as they grow older, they get more and more filters stacked on top of each other. And then some of them just conflict. And then you get a scenario where you're 50, you're like, what am I even fucking doing in my life? I feel like I've been walking like a zombie, just passively letting things decide for me how my life will go. Then you have a midlife crisis, and you're like, you kind of go the opposite of like, fuck everything. What if I just didn't listen to any of the advice and any of the suggestions and any of the things that have been built up in my filters? And that's a very drastic thing to do, but sometimes that's the only way people can get out of that filter system. And I'm not saying this is everyone. I'm just giving you an example of a scenario, right? Use your discernment, obviously. You want to go further? I mean, it's 40 minutes already. I like doing about an hour and a half. I guess I can go for 5 minutes. Let me blow my nose. Okay. But yeah, so I don't know. It's like you do all this filtering, and if you ask these questions like, how do I believe something to be true? Not, is this thing true? How is it that I've decided it's true? Asking that question can give you all sorts of insight into the filters you have. Because, as an example, how do I know that math is the way it is? Like, how is it that I think math as a concept is like, it works the way it does? Well, obviously as a kid, we grow up learning about math, and depending on the school and depending on where you went, you could learn about really high level math. But at a foundational level, math is built up on some fundamental concepts. And those concepts get mapped to the real world at a one-to-one level. That's why math is so useful, because we can describe through math all sorts of things. You know, at a simple level, describing 1 + 1, yeah, if I have one thing and I get another of that thing, now I have two of that thing. Like, intuitively, that's like so fundamental to like just how we measure everything, right? And so math has a very deep-rooted set of systems that lead me to believe it is, for all intents and purposes, factually true. If someone gives me math, I'm not going to argue whether that math really exists, because if I see 1 + 1 is 2, I'm like, yeah, you're right, it is 2. Even if I don't necessarily agree with what the person's saying, right? Like, I don't have any specific person saying, this is math and you need to believe me. So when it comes to belief, I observe it. I've kind of proved to myself that it does in fact track in the real world. And so, you know, math becomes something that is entwined into my reality. When I pay for an object, I use math. When people pay me for things, fundamentally, I expect that if someone says, I'm going to give you $100 for your desk, that if they give me $100, that fundamentally is $100. It's not secretly $98 because I didn't believe enough. Now, this is where science gets really tricky, because at a fundamental level, science operates in a similar way. But the difference, I'm going to turn around here. I'll put you guys up high today and I'll blow my nose. Don't know what this looks like, but you get a nice view of the trees. All right. So, so understanding this, now we come to kind of the next kind of phase of this, which is, okay, so you have basic things like math that foundationally you don't really need belief. Right, okay. You don't really need belief in order to kind of postulate that, yeah, this in fact does track and that is worth integrating into my belief system. Which ultimately is just your reality. The reality that you see and believe at a fundamental level. That is really what you're deciding with your belief system. And so you do this, you believe, yeah, math is helpful for this. So what about science? Isn't science the same thing? Yes and no. Like, there are some fundamental stuff about science, and we can use math to corroborate a lot of science. But there's one distinct difference with science. When it comes to math, there's kind of, there are exceptions to the rule when it comes to math, but generally speaking, if we see a number 2, 2 is 2. Like, you can write an equation where 2 isn't 2 because of some reason, but it all fundamentally, there's some logic behind it, right? But the moment you step past and into a scenario where you have to test, so an example, if I weigh a object, what are we using? We're using measurements. And how do we calculate what a measurement even means? How do we know an inch is an inch? We all decided collectively that an inch is an inch through some sort of means back when we were deciding on measurements. And this is the key. We're deciding on measurements. And unfortunately, measurements are great, but fundamentally, they are made up. All measurements are made up. And happy round numbers, those are all things that we've decided are a reason why the measurements are the way they are. They don't have, if I decided today to make up my own measurements and I said, you know what, centimeters and inches and, all these fucking measurements, I don't like the way they made them up, so I'm gonna make mine up. That's totally valid. And I can totally live my life with a different set of measurements Will anyone understand what I'm saying? Probably not. If I said, yes, this is 1/4 of a cubic. It's like, what's a cubic? Well, 1 cubic is the same as 5 quarks. And 5 quarks is the same as a log vine. And 5 log vines makes a tremple. And you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, and it's like, well, no, this is my measurement system. Okay, why are you not just using what we all agreed on? Well, because I didn't like it. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's totally fair. You make your own rulers up to measure your own measurements. You can live that way. And that would be your reality. And then every time someone says, yes, this is 6 inches, you have to calculate and convert. And then you're like, I know what 6 inches is. And this is my point. A lot of science is built on assumptions, on observable phenomena that we can repeat, and that is obviously important, right? If you have a chemical reaction and you know that you have to put 1 teaspoon into a solution you have and there's a chemical reaction every time, that is very valuable, right? But the measurements themselves and the way we built up to that, you inevitably have to agree that everything that's happened is kind of meaningful and helpful, and you buy into the system. And does that mean that if I don't believe in the teaspoon, well, first of all, belief or not belief in a measurement system is also kind of fucked. It's like, that's not really how it works. But, you know, for the sake of this kind of talk, believing in measurements or whatever, it has no value on whether or not they're actually true. You know, if I take a teaspoon and I get a teaspoon of a liquid or a solid or whatever, generally speaking, I get about the same results, whether I'm here in the woods or whether I'm in a lab somewhere, because we've all standardized what a teaspoon is. So, you know, I've kind of gone a little astray here, but what I'm trying to get at is we have agreed to believe that this is the standardized system that we should do. Sorry, I'm just like, the fuck is that? Oh, it's like oh, interesting. It's like a bunch of moss. It's all clumped together. We've agreed. And so it does have value. Once we've agreed, perfect. Now, it's something where we say you do a teaspoon, you know what that means. It has meaning, great. And it is the same thing with math. When it comes to numbers, we agree that 1 is 1, 0 is 0, 2 is 2. You may write it differently, but we fundamentally agree. And so because we agree, it now within the context of math, which again is all agreements on the basic foundations that we have laid out. Once we agree that math is useful, that measurements are useful, then we can say all sorts of things about observing different parts of reality. And we can say, well, within the context of math and science, this is an observation I have, and this is meaningful. And if you do this, you too can do the observation and get the same result. And that's the foundation of science, the foundation of math, and that's why it is so useful. But it is all supposed on an agreement, and because of that, it is not an absolute. It is just a way for us to organize our observations into some sort of result that can be replicated. If I hold up 2 apples, do I have to say 2? No. I can hold up 2 apples, and when you look at the 2 apples, you instinctively know that there are 2 objects there, even if you've never seen math before in your whole life. You just know that they're there. You may not be able to explain it in a relatively sophisticated manner, but you know that the objects are there. It's not like the objects disappear because suddenly you don't know math. So I'm leading this kind of conversation down a path towards this fundamental thing of how do you decide what is true? If you agree that you're going to use science and math as metrics to agree on observations and all of the great things that come from that, all of our technologies have come from these 2 disciplines. But inevitably, science cannot say everything because we don't have the ability to observe the universe in its entirety. We can't observe all of the fundamental rules. We're guessing. And our best guess is very practical. But it's our best guess. It may be backed by science and math, and so it is very close. And for all intents and purposes, the math and science that you base foundationally things that you exist on, it's like, yeah, for 99% of your existence, it makes sense that in a daily life, if you want to drive your car, you need to fill up gas, you need to put gas in it. Well, how much gas are you going to get to fill up your car? We need to do math. Or you just, go to the gas pump and just pump it until it stops pumping. But fundamentally, all of this stuff that we do is based on these principles. So inevitably, I know that $5 a gallon is true for the price of gas at a certain gas station. But is that the price of gas at every gas station? No, it's not. And in fact, even you go a couple miles and you might pay 50 cents more or 50 cents less per gallon. But, and this is what I'm leading you guys to, is when you assume that because you've seen one thing, gas, in a specific gas station for $5, if you make the assumption that all gas stations are $5. So I might as well buy gas here. That assumption's wrong, but it could be useful. Because when you make an assumption like that, it is in fact helpful for you to make a decision. So if you're trying to decide, where am I going to get gas? If you assume that gas is $5 everywhere, then it doesn't matter where you buy it, and you can just go to the nearest gas station, get gas, and it'll be fine. Same thing where if you believe that Fred Meyer gas or Costco gas or whatever, local store, their gas is cheaper, then it's easy to just go to that place, even if it actually isn't cheaper. Or even if 70% of the time it's cheaper, but 30% of the time it's not. The amount of effort that you have to do in order to find cheaper gas every time you need to fill by going into Google and, again, you're kind of assuming that Google's going to tell you the proper answers. And so if you don't want to go driving around trying to look at all the different prices for gas, and you might end up spending more gas on just driving around to find out what the current prices are than to just make that assumption to just go get gas at the place you usually get gas at. So this is why these things are helpful. But the moment you take that helpfulness of the situation, where it is helpful to assume, that gas is $5 a gallon everywhere. But it is not accurate. It is not actually true. And so making this distinction and understanding where the truth that going to Fred Meyer is cheaper comes from, or going to Costco, or going to, whatever place you go to. Understanding where the assumption comes from is important, because in the context of gas, when you're at some random place that you've never been to, maybe it is important to do that, hey, let's check around to see what gas prices look like. And then over the span of the next, 6 months, maybe since you've done that research, you can again just assume that X place is the cheapest and be happy with that, even if it's not technically the cheapest. So coming back here, before I continue, I got 5 minutes left, so I'm gonna switch over. I say 5 minutes. I got technically 8 minutes, 7 minutes, or 6 minutes actually. Okay, I'll be back in a sec. Bye. Hello, I'm back. Okay, so I know I went down kind of a rabbit hole here, and trust me, it does loop back to the initial question. So I've given you reasons to question assumptions that you make, filters, and all this stuff, so that you're starting to ask questions of why do you believe something, or why do you think something's true. But on a day-to-day, you might be asking, okay, this is cool, but how can I actually apply this, and where is it actually important to apply this? Well, the more things you assume are correct at face value, because someone said something that you believe, where it's like, okay, Here, let me back up. Someone that you trust says information to you. Instead of just, oh, okay, agreeing that what they said is correct, and then adding that to your database of knowledge without questioning at all. Instead, asking follow-up questions. Oh, well, how'd you find that out? And I'm not saying be a dick and be like, everything that this person says is I need to verify. That's not what I'm saying. Because that is annoying and frustrating. But what you can do is if someone says something like, did you know that the average life expectancy for humans is actually 50 years old? And you're like, now wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. But you do trust this person. And you're like, why would they say that? This is where you start to do some critical thinking and ask like, okay, where'd you hear that from? You know, and you don't have to be an asshole about it. But you can like, if you don't feel comfortable asking them, you can just look it up yourself. And you do some verification, you find out they're full of bullshit, and that there was an article that was on TikTok that was saying some crazy thing where in fact people aren't living until 50, they're living until 80, and there's a very niche case where this is true. You're like, okay, fine. But, you know, questioning your assumptions and questioning truth, and I put in quotes, truth, because really, what is truth? Truth is, in essence, something that we have collectively agreed is verified to be accurate. If I was to tell you that the sun does not rise and it does not set, and in fact, it's all a holographic projection. Well, like, okay, maybe that's your truth because you've decided through some sort of your own verification process. But is that truth? Well, maybe to you it is because you've verified it for yourself. But as soon as you start interacting with other people, they're gonna be like, you're fucking crazy. That is not true at all. What is true is, and then they explain the model of the solar system and how we rotate and blah, 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 whatever, right? Now, what happens when you have two conflicting viewpoints that both seem to have verifiable data? This is where it starts to get really tricky. Because on the one hand, there's this piece of truth where it's like, it has been verified that, you know, I'll use like politics as an example. Someone says something like, I hate New Yorkers, okay? Someone says that, and they're a politician, and it's clipped, and it's sent around, and people are like, oh my God, this is true. Now, okay, we're doing a lot of like, we're assuming there's no AI shenanigans or any of that. It's just genuinely like, thousands of people saw this person say this, okay? And it's all very verifiable true. Now, you take that at face value and are like, fuck, that is fucked, right? Like, why would they just say that they hate New Yorkers? New Yorkers are awesome. They're really kind. They're caring. They're considerate. They're very helpful. And, you know, whatever, right? And so you're like pissed about hearing this. And you're like, well, I'm not going to vote for this guy. He hates New Yorkers. Like, fuck him, you know? But later you find out that while that was true, that's what he said, the other part of the context before he said those words were saying something to the effect of, like, you know, I hate how millionaires go to New York and they pretend to be New Yorkers and it's bullshit, and they like LARP around, and, you know, they steal and they try to make it look like it's the New Yorkers that are doing it, when in actuality it's these guys. I hate New Yorkers that do this. Okay? Now that suddenly is totally different because the context got changed. And so then you go, well, wait a minute. In actuality, this first part that is true left out another piece of evidence that supports it. And then you could do this for infinity, where, like, leaving out important pieces of information because you're trying to make someone look bad. And this is how generally the right and the left in the US fight. They fight by leaving out information. They take what's convenient for them, clip it and ship it, and then try to rile up their side to hate the other side. And that's kind of what has happened. There's this huge divide where people are just now like, anyone who's right is a fucking bigoted asshole. Anyone who's left is some crazy nut who doesn't even care about the country. And it's like, is that actually true? No, that's not true at all. But, like, you know, there's all sorts of evidence that you've seen over time that make you think one or the other. And so you take that and you make it true when it really isn't. And this is where even truth that's verified and completely like, yeah, we have all the evidence, it can totally be wrong in the greater context, even if it's true. You know, here's an example. Someone dies in the forest. And we know that 10,000 people went into the forest that day. Does that mean all 10,000 of them went and murdered the person? No. But the fact can be spun to make it appear that that's what happened. Yeah, this one guy, we found out he actually, he brought a gun with him into the forest. Isn't that suspicious? It's like, yeah, he did bring a gun. But what does that actually mean? Did he take it for self-defense? Do we know the context? So this is where the truth that you feel so strongly about, where there's so much evidence to support, that truth you have to question if there's other context, and even if it's a valid kind of point to use. So, you know, I bring this up because we make a lot of assumptions on what is true without really, like, most people do not even need evidence to just believe something to be true. You know, high enough a figure, some official says something, some parliament person, the president, some physicist, you know, whatever, right? All these credentials can make for a compelling argument that actually isn't really backed by anything. They're just saying things. Just like for me, when I say something, I don't expect you to just believe it at face value. My whole point with bringing stuff like this up is for you to think, use your brain, and to try and understand. You know, obviously I'm not trying to lie to you. But do I have all the answers? No. I'm human just like you. So I do my best. I try to figure out stuff. I have my own experiences that I can pull from, but I can't prove anything. Just as no one can really prove anything that they've experienced. So what's the next best thing? Having someone, aside from them, verify it. And what better way to get verified for you than for you to verify it yourself? Am I full of bullshit when it comes to self-improvement? You tell me. Have you tried? And not for just a couple minutes. Have you actually just sat down and tried for a couple weeks, even a month? Like, have you given it an honest shot? Have you thought about these things that I'm bringing up? And so this is why when I bring this up, my hope, and I can't know what you guys do with the information I say. It's just a data point. And it's your job to discern, is this helpful? Is what I'm saying helpful? And then, you know, if I suggest things, okay, what can I actually implement it in my life in some way that will help? You know, if I say eating a pear a day makes me feel better, like, sure, I say that, but does that actually help you in determining if you should eat a pear? Sorry, little spider, sorry. Hold on, little guy. Yeah, sorry. There you go. I gotta blow my nose. Sorry. Okay. You know, it's similar to, well, just in general. No matter how well-intentioned someone is, if you don't try to verify for yourself, how's it going? If you don't verify for yourself whether that specific information or whatever is helpful, then you're kind of just letting other people dictate how you live in the world. And this is where critical thinking comes into play. So, why do I think critical thinking is incredibly important and is something that is at its core, I push this very consistently, that I think you should use critical thinking with everything. Well, I say everything. It's kind of hard to do that when it comes to spirituality, because critical thinking, it's not that it falls outside of spirituality, it's that spirituality, your beliefs and your feelings and thoughts are a part of the spirituality process. And so if you believe spirituality interacts with you in a way, then you will get supporting evidence to support that. And then on the other hand, if you believe that spirituality is nonsense and it doesn't affect you at all, you will get supporting evidence to prove that. So this is where, if you try to dissect through critical thinking, this is where it kind of falls apart, because it's kind of like you're rigging the game by the way you believe. Because spirituality involves belief. It's kind of like the equivalent of if you have a light bulb, you're trying to prove whether the light bulb is on or off. You walk into the room and you flip the light switch and it's on. And you're like, see, it's on. And then someone else walks into the room, turns the light switch off, says, look, it's off. They're both correct. They're both true. That is true. But they inherently flip the light switch on or off because, and I'm using the light switch as belief, okay? So like, if it wasn't clear. So one used their belief and flipped the light on, and one used their belief and flipped the light off. And this is where it gets really confusing, because you can have both be true when it comes to spirituality. Oh, I'm so sorry, little guy. Let's see, can I duck? Yeah, okay, there we go. All right, there's a spider that had half its web destroyed. But yeah, so you basically, you can have both be true in spirituality, where one person experiences paranormal phenomena and has like fucking ghosts moving shit and like hears sounds and all sorts of stuff, right? Or there's just a whole host of things that can happen. And then, you know, same thing with like synchronicities. Like, you know how I talk about those synchronicities, and a lot of times oh god damn it, it's like these spiders just really, they just love these open areas. I get it, but it makes it tough to walk sometimes. But anyway, your belief impacts reality. And this is where a lot of people get stuck when it comes to spirituality. How can something I believe change reality? Well, we do it all the time, and we don't even think about the fact that we're doing it. You know, I go back to the idea of, if you believe that the gas station you go to is the cheapest, then you have warped your reality such that to you, that gas station is cheapest. Whether it is or isn't, that's irrelevant. To you, it is true. And you might say, okay, but that's not changing reality. No, it's changing your reality. And that is the important distinction. You can have something happen to you that basically changes your reality, but it doesn't affect other people's reality. And as soon as you understand that, the world kind of opens up in a new way, where you can test your belief. But the problem is, how do you test something if you don't truly believe it? You kind of can't. This is the catch-22 of trying to measure something with science, like spirituality. How can I measure whether something is happening that is warping your reality if I can't measure it? And so you have incredibly powerful people who are able to warp not just their reality, but the reality of others in their local vicinity. And people are like, holy shit, this is real. Well, it's technically real, but also it's real insofar as you had an experience, the other person had an experience with you, and you both agree that this thing is real because you both experienced it. And this is where we get into like quantum reality effectively, where it's like my reality can be such that, you know, what I said the other day with like aliens and technology, AI, all of that stuff, right? I can have those things be real to me because I believe that that is what's going to happen. And you can also have an experience where it's not true. And we both are right. Because I go off and kind of experience this in a different kind of timeline than you. Because we're all like weaving through different parts of reality. And inevitably, I'll just say, and I have no way to prove this, but I believe on a fundamental level that some of you watching will see all of this stuff, and when I go on the trip, there's going to be a version of me that has one thing happen on the trip. And then this version of me may have something completely different happen on the trip. And your belief in what you think is going to happen can warp which version of me you see. Doesn't mean you change me, the me that's talking to you right this moment. It doesn't change that person. But there is a scenario where I shift my timeline into a different kind of reality where basically all the things I've been talking about just happen for me. And if you think and kind of match that frequency that I'm putting out, you might also just join me in that timeline. And then vice versa. If you think I'm full of shit, you won't follow me. You'll follow someone else. A different me where my beliefs are different. And yeah, it's like, it's hard to wrap my head around, but it's like, we have infinite numbers of us. And the me that basically exists a certain way, and the you that exists in a similar way. We all kind of we can kind of go in the same direction. And how can I prove that? I can't. But I do feel strongly that that is kind of how reality operates at the moment. Now, maybe my model gets updated at some point and I change my belief system. But this is the best I got right now. So, yeah. Anyway. This is definitely this is an out there message today. So, I don't blame you guys if you turned off the video or kind of just tuned it out. We'll just see. We'll see what happens. And, the best thing I can do is believe what I believe and keep going. And make sure that the beliefs I believe in are positive for me and for the existence I want to see. And that's why I think it's so important to just figure out your belief system and figure out the life that you want to live. And by figuring that out, you can kind of guide that trajectory where I want to have this kind of life. Well, you head off and you go and allow for that to happen. And the key is not letting, you don't want to think of the outcome in so much as this is how it's going to happen. Being a bit more vague of like, I'm going to find the perfect job for me. And then you go off and you start looking for a job. And you just let that process happen however it's going to happen. This is kind of what I'm talking about. So, I don't know. I feel like someone out there is gonna like understand what I'm talking about. Or this will be helpful for someone. I don't know who. It may be a lot of someone's. It may only be a few people. I'm not sure. But I know it'll be helpful. So, yeah. Okay, I'll talk to you guys later. I don't know if I'm gonna do the suit thing today. I'm already pretty tired, and I just kind of, I don't know. We'll see. I will wear the suit at some point and show you guys before I leave, but if I make a video later in the day, I do. If not, have a good night, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.